initiate the last part of our meetup today, and that is, if everybody here who is, has been a part of this since almost 10 a.m. now, and if they want to ask any questions to, you Akshay directly or Philip, please, go ahead and anything in general you want to ask or about Android or anything.
Yeah, that can be anything like Android, Kotlin, even like Kotlin multi-platform.
I have one question. Hi, this is Bhavin Desai, right? So nowadays I'm learning React, right? And this is the first time I'm going out of the Android world, right? And as I said before in my introduction, that I'm missing Kotlin badly. And when Philip started his presentation, I saw that the Kotlin is supported for JavaScript as well, right?
Yep.
So, anyone of you have, or Akshay, you have any experience with Kotlin and React combination, uh, official support or anything?
I can take this, Philip. Uh, so Kotlin does support JavaScript, and you can use it for like your Node.js applications or React.js applications. But I think the problem is there is like less people using it, and there are like so if you're stuck, you're on your own basically. Either you need to talk with the Kotlin team, or there is like super less community around it. Like there is not a lot of people using React or Node.js with Kotlin, but it is possible. Like it's there in the documentation. Some people are using, and there are also like a couple of talks from Kotlin Conf which talk about this. Um, but yeah, I think the problem is like there is not a strong community around it. So like if you're stuck somewhere, it's a bit hard to find those problems, like in the solution.
Right, right.
Yeah, I
I
think
understand.
I think the JavaScript project came along as with the Kotlin native project, and there was just a lot of things going around. So JetBrains decided to see what will stick, so to say. So they, were trying to see what projects will be used the most. Um, for example, that's why the Kotlin native project is being pushed so much, because everyone wants to use it. Everyone wants to share code bases between the core code base between their iOS, Android, or even web apps. And as Akshay mentioned, the JavaScript version of it is not that used. So I think you can use it, but yeah, as he mentioned, you're to yourself, and you don't really have a lot of people you can talk to for help. Um, so I personally wouldn't recommend it for any production app, because it doesn't have enough traction for you to be able to look at other projects and find out solutions to your problems. One example too is the Cater version, so the backend version of Kotlin. It has much more traction than the React, or let's say the JavaScript version, but it still has a lot of problems. I tried playing around with it a couple of weeks ago, and I had a problem where I couldn't send a multi-part request. It just kept crashing, and I opened an issue and saw that there's a lot of issues similar to that, and it still hasn't been solved. And it's a much more popular project compared to the Kotlin JavaScript version. So that can tell you a lot.
Right. Yeah, I got an idea. So just one more follow up question on that, right? So when I use Kotlin with my existing Android project, I can use Java and Kotlin both together in one project. So is it not possible with the JavaScript? Like I can start writing Kotlin code, but like if I stuck, I can switch to JavaScript in the same project. Do you think that is possible?
I don't think you specifically write JavaScript in Kotlin/JavaScript. I think you write something similar to JSX from React. So like a set of functions and a set of specialized syntax, which then transpiles to JavaScript. So basically, I think you can mix them. I'm not sure how, because I haven't used it personally, but I think the idea is that you wouldn't really have to write JavaScript. You would just rely on Kotlin. So, possibly you would write the Kotlin version of the JSX, and then use Cater for the backend instead of Node.js, so to avoid JavaScript completely.
Right. Thank you, Akshay and Philip.
There is one more thing which we use in the company is like we have this Kotlin multi-platform setup. And this like, so the whole code is written in Kotlin and it exposes some JavaScript bindings and our backend is in Node.js. So they use this Kotlin code from the JavaScript code.
Right, got it.
Akshay, so that is very interesting. I mean, what is the specific use case for such a architecture, so to say?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think so. It's really interesting, like because there is also a thin line between choosing Kotlin multi-platform versus versus like the backend solution. Because a lot of people say that if you want to like do some sort of a sharing between your iOS and Android, put your stuff on the backend, and then the clients can just call the backend and get the result again. Um, but yeah, like I think there is a thin line. I don't know, I think it depends upon your use case, but for in our case, so our app is like a female health app where we show menstrual cycles, and we calculate like your next cycle, we calculate when you're going to have your next period or like same symptoms associated to it. And so all this basic algorithm is like just pure business logic and just algorithmic stuff. So what we did is like we just wrote all of that into the Kotlin multi-platform style. So it's in the common code, and this same formulas or algorithms are used by Android, iOS, and backend. Even backend uses this setup to calculate like things.
Well, that is interesting. So basically, what you're saying is, this saves a lot of time by not replicating the same code and just having it in one code base, right?
Yeah, totally, totally. And I mean, it's super useful. Like, for example, let's say we found like a bug with computing the cycles or something. There was like, let's say we mistakenly made a bug where we show the period 1 day shorter than it's expected to be. And then usually if it's a problem, then if that's the problem on all the three platforms, and we just need to fix it at one place so that it's fixed in all the three places. So that I think the long term benefit is really amazing because like you just solve it at one place, and or like, have the core logic at some other place. And also like I think the bigger advantage is that it makes you think to write the code in like more separation format, because when you write in Kotlin multi-platform, you don't have any of the Android stuff. So you are kind of forced to write like pure Kotlin code and test it purely on JVM or something like that, and then you can use it on Android with so that the algorithm or the business logic itself is like super well tested.
Anything related to performance about this? I mean, since it's like every platform is using it, right? So
Yes. Okay, that's a really interesting question. I think so. We have been using Kotlin multi-platform since 4 years, um, and so for Android, we don't see any performance issue. That is because it's pretty much like calling any Kotlin library or like a Java library, something like that. So we don't have any performance overhead on Android. The backend, I'm not so sure. Because the backend I think so. The code is compiled to JavaScript when they use it on the backend for Node.js. So our backend is also like they use Node.js and they also use Kotlin for backend, like using Spring Boot. Um, so in the Node.js case, they just use the JavaScript bindings. So in there also, I don't think there is a performance overhead. But for iOS, there is. So for iOS, the reason why they have it is because they are not using Kotlin native. So the iOS, they haven't like started using the setup for Kotlin native. So they rely on the JavaScript binding, which is also used by backend. So what they do on iOS app is like they use a JavaScript bridging to call the shared code function, or like the Kotlin multi-platform functions, which adds like a performance overhead for them. So for iOS, it's definitely bad in terms of performance right now. But if they use Kotlin native, then they wouldn't have any problem.
Interesting. That is very interesting. So, anybody else has any questions that they want to ask?
Hello, hello Akshay and Flip. Gaurav here. And my question is that actually I'm new to Kotlin. Can you explain about what are Kotlin based features according to you we can use for Android development and all?
There are so many. Kotlin is like full of amazing features. I don't know, like I need to think which is which one I like the most from all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would. For me, I say the I have three features in my mind which are the most useful for me in everyday Android life. The first would be nullability, so you don't have to worry about null as much as in Java, for example. You can easily handle null cases, use the Elvis operators, use some even more advanced nullability cases and smart casting. The second would be the expressions. So that's something I use in almost every function. I use some way to assign a value using an expression. So that's really, really cool. And the third would be lambda functions, or higher order functions. So when you can represent a piece of code as or a function as an object, and then you can pass it around to other pieces of code or other classes, things like that. So those three, I think, are the ones that save me the most time and which make the Android life the easiest, so to say.
Okay. And anything about stackless coroutines?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Anything about stackless coroutines? Hello.
What do you mean by stackless routines? So I'm not sure I understand.
About means about coroutines and all. I destroy your podcast. And
oh, stateless. Sorry, I understood stackless. So, well, yeah. So stateless in a way that you launch a coroutine and you forget about it, or do you mean by returning a value or something like that?
Yes.
Yeah. So the coroutines API has several functions which are called coroutine builders. And each builder is used for different things. When you want to just run some work in a coroutine in a different dispatch, a different thread, and forget about it, you can use the launch function, launch builder. So that's pretty much it about the stateless. You don't really care about the state of it or returning values. So it's really easy to use. You just use some scope. If you are using view models and the architecture component framework, then you have the view model scope, which is main first, and it has a coroutine scope which communicates with the lifecycle of the view model and of the activities or fragments. So you don't have to worry as much about the cancellation or about resource cleanup. So you can call within any view model scope .launch, and you can create a coroutine which runs on the main thread, and from that point you can fetch any piece of data or anything from any other coroutine or suspending function. So yeah, I'm not sure if that answers your question, but if you ever need anything without fetching data or caring about the state of the coroutine or the lifecycle of the coroutine, then you can use the launch coroutine builder and just run a piece of work in the background, or any other dispatcher you want to use. But if you want to fetch any data, then you can use either with context, which is like a simple way to bridge between two threads. So you can just say with context and add an IO dispatcher, for example, and return a value from a different thread, which is asynchronous, so from a asynchronous function. And that's a really good way when you want to return one value. So it's for single values. If you want to return multiple values and have them run in parallel, then I would suggest using async and await. So basically build a couple of async blocks and fetch the values you need, and then await at one point in time and call a different function with those values. So you don't necessarily have to wait for each value sequentially. You would just run them all in parallel and then wait for all of the values to be computed at once. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, because I'm not sure I understand it properly when you say stateless, what you mean in stateless, but yeah, hopefully that will help.
Thanks, Philip. Any other questions from the community?
Yes, I had a question. My question is, do you guys use Jetpack Compose in production, and do you think that it will replace the XML for UIs?
I mean,
That's great. I was supposed to answer your question. Yeah, that's great.
I mean, like even the Jetpack team doesn't want you to use it in production right now, because it's like super early in stages and things can go very different ways right now. And it's like they just the idea was to not let people use it right now, just to give early feedback and see the open development so people can try out and report their issues. But about your second point, we still don't know. I mean, it might replace XMLs. It sounds really promising. But yeah, like I think the time will tell, I guess.
Okay, thanks.
So basically, if you have used, I think if you have written any code using the Flutter framework, it's just like that. It's going to save a lot of time. And as far as I've been building some small apps using Jetpack Compose, and I'm very much impressed with it. Like, I didn't even have to touch the REST folder. All I have to do is take a composable function, just write, implement buttons and all, and just such a small code. And the best thing about the latest Android Studio Canary is that you can see the live update without using your physical device. Nor you have to use your emulator. There will be a vertical slide on the right hand, and you will be seeing the preview of your changes. Every time you click on build, it will automatically show you the changes. So that's what's happening with that's what the team is doing with Jetpack Compose. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, right now you can just like play with it and like give them early feedback, see how it works, and just enjoy it probably.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Yeah. One thing I would say also is whenever there's a new cool thing in Android which Google is building, you should always take it with precaution, because there's, for example, the architecture in Android has changed multiple times throughout the years. So there were, you had the MVC, then MVP, then MVVM approach, and there's also a lot of other stuff. So when you look at the UI building and the XMLs and showing data to the UI, there's also been a lot of changes. So there used to be the data binding way of doing things. There used to be the find view by ID way of doing things. Then Kotlin synthetics. Then finally Jetpack Compose. So there's a lot of things going on right now, and there's a lot of things that are in the Android ecosystem, and any one of those things can just be stopped or lose support in a month or two. So that's kind of the reason why you shouldn't really use Jetpack Compose in production, because maybe in a couple of months things change and the whole project is just I wouldn't say killed, but it loses support. It's similar to how the Android Things project lost support and some other things. So definitely be careful about that, and definitely try to see how Google is handling things, because even Kotlin was a wildcard, and even Kotlin was not 100% sure to be a language in Android until audience or the community decided that it's something we want to use, and finally Google decided to introduce it to the Android world as one of the first class languages. So you always have to be careful about that, and I think the best way to do that is to play with Compose in your own time, and then follow what Google says about the life cycle of the library itself as they develop it.
Okay, I had another question. It is, you Akshay, you mentioned that Flow API is not a one-to-one replacement for reactive streams or RX Java. So, what are the scenarios that you would say that RX Java is better or Kotlin Flow is better?
So the first thing is like coroutines itself are not one-on-one replacement for RxJava, but Flow is. And I think I would say like no one is better, like because like so there is no good or bad in this case. Like RxJava is really amazing at what it does, and it is like super used and trusted and has like a lot of community support. So many libraries are already using RxJava. So I think it also depends upon your use case, like what you want to do. So for example, in our case, why we like super quickly move to Flow in such a in such a fast pace, is because like we use RxJava 1 in our code base, and we wanted to migrate from RxJava 1 to 2, but from 1 to 2 is like really hard because one allows using nullable strings and 2 doesn't allow it, and that's kind of like a deal breaker for refactoring the whole app if you wanted to do that. So that's why we chose to go with Flow. So that the aim of this is like what I'm trying to say is like you need to kind of evaluate if it makes sense. But I would say no matter what you choose, both of them are amazing.
Okay, got it.
There is one more question about Tiger and Coin. Yeah, like let's not take it.
Definitely. I think there was a long debate that was going on Twitter about this, where everybody was arguing, what they use.
Yeah,
I think
similar to like RxJava and the Flow question, like none of them is like good or bad. It's like depends upon what you want to do, what fits your team, and what fits your code base and the learning curve, I guess.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I think both Kotlin and Coin and Dagger, sorry, are what fits your use case and what fits your team. So if you have more experienced developers who are just fine with the way Dagger works and just find it much more intuitive than Coin, then I would say go with Dagger. If you are a newer developer and you don't really understand Dagger that easily, but Coin is much easier for you to understand, and it's easier for you to build apps, then I would say go with Coin. I don't think there are any performance downsides from Coin compared to Dagger or vice versa. There are some runtime performance losses in Coin, I think, but it's like a really small piece of overhead because the library is really optimized. The newer versions are, I think, as fast as Dagger. But Dagger then again introduces some build time speed issues because of all the code generation. So I guess in the end it depends on what you like and what you prefer. So it's not really a question you can say yes or no to.
Yeah, I would. But I super agree with that. There is no rule of thumb over here.
Oh, and there was a question on what Coin and Dagger are. So Coin and Dagger are frameworks which you can use to build dependencies in your projects. So a dependency is any class which you use in your code which doesn't necessarily come out of the box. So for example, the room database can be a dependency in your project because you have to create it on your own and then you have to use it to access the database. Then if you build like a repository or some other class around a room, that's also a dependency within the project. So basically any class that you literally depend upon to work so your project works. And Dagger and Coin help with building the dependency graph, so to say, or all your dependencies. in a way that you can provide, for example, a room wherever you want in your app once you provide it in the first place. Same goes for Dagger. So once you build your room dependency in Dagger, you can inject it. So that's like the term. You can send it to any part of your code and then use the same dependency. So it's a really complex topic and not something you can explain in 5 minutes. So definitely try to read up a bit about both Dagger and Coin to see what the fuss is about.
So, Philip and Akshay, I want to ask both of you, what are some of the, plans going ahead, and, some of the new things that you both are doing, and, some new things that are happening either with Android or Kotlin, that you guys will be speaking on, or what can the community expect from you, in the upcoming months?
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead, go ahead. I'm still thinking.
Okay. So hopefully you can hear me still. So I usually talk about coroutines. That's something, I co-authored a book with Nishan Srivastava, and it's a really fun topic for me. I like the API a lot. So I usually talk about that. I try to talk about, software development in general. So writing good with good practices in mind, developing architecture with good practices in mind, and stuff like that. I haven't really planned a lot of conferences this year. Last year I had over 10 or 12 conferences, and it's really exhausting. It's really hard to keep up with all the travels and everything. So this year I was going to say, yeah, I'll only keep to a few conferences. But with the health situation going on, I think I may do like a couple of online talks and stuff like that. The things that I'm building and I'm kind of working on this year are mostly focused on my personal stuff. So I'm supposed to graduate my master's degree thesis this year. So I'm writing or working on a project and a thesis about accessibility in Android. The idea is to build like a leak canary kind of application or library which detects accessibility problems in your app and then gives you the report so you can fix that and support more people in your application. So that's something I'll be mainly focusing on this year, and hopefully giving a talk on a couple of meetups or something about that once that's kind of built, so to say.
Nice.
What about you? Yeah, Akshay, go ahead.
No, I love that you're still doing your master's. That's great. Yeah, I think, just like from my side, I'm usually like always maintaining my news app project. I don't know if you have seen it. I just posted the link like a few minutes ago in the chat. I just keep updating with all the new things I try upon. But like a couple of things which I am interested in is like going deeper into Flow, and because like there are so many things which Flow is still missing, like not so many things, but are in progress, or like so many cool things which would change how we work. And yeah, it's just super exciting. Other part is like Kotlin multi-platform. I just love it. I use it quite often. I just want to try it more and see how useful it is, like in other cases apart from our company's case.
Okay, that's nice to hear, Akshay. Any other questions anybody has to ask? We have 10 more minutes left.
One thing which I want to tell about like Kotlin's experimental status is that like you would see even with using Flow or coroutines or a lot of like Kotlin features, you will see that there is some sort of thing called an experimental. Even with Flow, the Flow itself is stable, but some of the operators are still experimental. So what they mean by experimental is like it's ready for production, but it might change, the behavior might change, or like the API might be deprecated, or some sort of things like that. But yeah, you can use it technically in your production code, and we are actually using it in our production code. Thing
Great.
which I wanted to bring. Yeah.
Yeah, that seems informative.